Okay. But we are actually, so the point here is to actually cover the lesson. If you have not done so already, open your books to Unit 2. This is page 55, I think. Find page 55. No, stop clapping. I will be returning some work to you later today, and you have some homework. Maybe I can even... Here you go. This is our work for today. We're going to look at the lesson 6 for statements. We are going to extend our understanding of terms to the terms' relationships to each other. The homework that is due next week is exercise 6, and you should have some time for that in class today. And you should also have some time, if you haven't turned it in already, the review exercises. Let's please make sure to get every other review exercise turned in. So Unit 1, we started with terms, right? We learned how to define terms, and we saw there are several different kinds of definitions. Like sometimes we have stipulative definitions where we make up our own definition. Other times we have lexical definitions. That's what we could expect to find in the dictionary. But we have lots of different kinds of definitions. And then we also learned some different methods for defining, the best being what we call genus and difference. But of course, we also were able to define by synonym and define by example. But again, Unit 1 was all about those definitions, terms and their definitions. Unit 2 now takes those terms and places them in relationship with each other, and that's called a statement. So that's what we're studying now in Unit 2. You can see the different lessons that we're going to cover here. Lesson 6 is what we're doing today on statements. Lessons 7 and 8 are all about how we know statements are true or not, what are called supported statements or self-supporting statements. And in fact, this will occupy most of the rest of the year. So Unit 2 doesn't quite get us all the way to the end of this year, but it gets us most of the way to the end of this year. Terms, their relationships with each other in what's called a statement, and then those statements' relationships between each other. There are several you can see here toward the end of this unit: contrariety, subcontrariety, contradiction. So we're going to be defining all these special kinds of relationships as we get closer to the end of the year. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves, though. Let's start with Lesson 6. Get your highlighter ready so that you can highlight whatever I highlight and so on. Okay, let's go ahead and read together. And right off the bat, we get a thing that we should highlight. A statement is a particular kind of sentence that brings a message that can be said to be either true or false. Or another way to put that, and really they just say it right here in the margin, a statement is a sentence that is either true or false. A statement is a sentence that is either true or false. So here's an example of a true statement. The Apostle Paul wrote the book of Galatians. Notice we have several different terms in this statement. The two most important terms are Paul, he is the subject of this sentence, and then the predicate, which says he wrote the book of Galatians. The statement is a claim about the relationship between these two terms. It tells us Paul is the person who wrote the book of Galatians. But of course, you can easily imagine a statement that's false. The Apostle Paul wrote the book of Isaiah. Does that sound right to you guys?
Nope.
Why not?
Pretty sure Isaiah did it.
Yeah, probably it was Isaiah, right? So again, notice the terms here. One of them is the same, one of them is different. Paul is still our subject, but now the predicate is wrote the book of Isaiah, and no, in this case, that's false. When we evaluate statements, we should be looking for their truth value. The first statement has a true truth value. The second sentence is said to have a false truth value. But here's the key. If a sentence has no truth value, it is not a statement at all. Now, some of these should be obvious. Why wouldn't we say, who wrote the book of 1 Timothy is a statement? What do you think?
Because it's a question.
Yeah, it's a question instead. It's not making a truth claim. Like if I said, who wrote the book of 1 Timothy? And you said, false, that would be weird, right? it's not that it's true or false, it's asking a question. Basically, in this case, you can see the subject is unknown. We don't know who wrote the book of 1 Timothy, so this is not a claim at all. This is not a statement. Ford, what about this second sentence? Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church.
Well, it's telling you to do something, not a statement.
Very good. Again, we wouldn't say true or false, because this isn't something that's true or false already. This is a command, right? A command cannot be said to be true or false. It's just something we're supposed to do. The first sentence here is a question, and it consequently has no truth value. It is neither true nor false, and therefore is not a statement. Again, that's the key. If it cannot be said to be true or false, it is not a statement. The second sentence is a command. It also has no truth value, and therefore is not a statement. There is another kind of sentence that requires a little more care. It has the form of a statement, but it is not a real statement. Again, the instrument used to determine whether it is a statement is whether the sentence has a truth value. So let's see if we can figure out what's going on here. The round square sweetly kicked the green yesterday. Eva, what do you think about that? The round square sweetly kicked the green yesterday. Okay, I hear false. Is it just false?
It is untrue.
It's untrue, says Eva.
No, it can't happen.
What do you... It's impossible. Now that's different. Eliana, what do you think?
Very, unspecific. You don't
It's pretty specific. The round square sweetly kicked the green yesterday.
The green. Round green one. The green.
Okay, all right. Shh. The green what I'm hearing. That's a good point. There's another problem here. What do you notice, Audrey?
How does a square kick?
Very good. How does a square kick? And for that matter, okay, all right, hands down. For that matter, what's a round square? A square, by definition, is a very cornery kind of object, right? It has 4 sharp right-angled corners. So this is an example of something that looks like a statement, but is actually nonsense. This is called nonsense. You can see here in the margin, make sure that's highlighted, questions, commands, and nonsense sentences are not statements because they do not have a truth value. There is no such thing as a round square, and so this sentence does not make any sense. We can't say it's true or false. As I think Eva said, it's impossible, right? As Eliana pointed out, what on earth does it mean to kick green? You could kick a green object. You could kick a green crayon. You could kick a green football. If you painted your brother green, you could kick a green brother. But you can't kick a green. Now, what do you think? Yeah.
Couldn't you kick like a green in golf?
Good. Okay. So if we sufficiently explain several of these terms, we might be able to approach some meaning. But again, we're always going to fall short when we get to this round square part. There's no such thing as a round square. And so we can't ever say that this is a true statement or a false statement. What do you think? But then it wouldn't be round. It would be called the town round. Maybe. But even then, can a town square kick somebody? No, right? All right. Now, there are a couple things to be careful of here. Turn to the next page. This looks like a statement, but it cannot even be said to be false. It doesn't refer to anything. Again, its subject is something that does not exist. Now, I want to skip down for a second. We'll read this next part. Come down to this paragraph. One caution. There are statements that sound silly, but that doesn't mean they're necessarily nonsense. They might just be ridiculous. For example, if I said, the queen is a man, is that nonsense or is it just false? It's false, right? So if we can understand what a sentence means, and maybe it sounds ridiculous, but we realize, oh, it's just false. Or something here, dogs grow 2 heads when tickled. Well, that's ridiculous, right? Although it sounds silly, these are not nonsense. Instead, they have a truth value. They're simply false. So you want to be really careful. In fact, you might even jot this down. Silly does not equal nonsense. Yes, some nonsensical statements will be silly, and some silly statements will be nonsense, but not always. Sometimes a silly statement is simply false. Now, what you should wonder after that is, okay, if silly is not always nonsense, does that at least mean that nonsense statements are always silly? But even that answer is no. Take a look at this second example of nonsense. This one's a little bit strange. This sentence is false. That certainly looks like a statement to me. It's a sentence, and it seems to be making a truth claim. But let's go through this one step at a time. If I say that it's true that this sentence is false, what must that mean?
That it's true.
Why? If I say it's true, it has to be true. That's our law of identity, right? But what does the statement itself claim? If we say this sentence is false, is true, then that must mean it's true that it's false. But if it's false, that would mean it's true. Do you see the problem here? Yeah, it hurts my head too. What if I said, okay, actually, this is false? What must it mean if we said this sentence is false, is false?
That it's not false.
It doesn't mean it's true, right? But wait, if it's true, then that means it's false. Do you guys see how we end up running around in circles here? This looks like it's making a truth claim, but actually it cannot even be said to be true or false. Instead, it's not the kind of statement we can use at all in logic. It is not a logical statement. All right, as always, we get our summary at the end of the lesson. A statement is a sentence that is either true or false. Other kinds of sentences that have no truth value, like questions, commands, and nonsense, are not statements. So what we mean in logic by statement is something that for sure is either true or false. Questions on the lesson? Your homework, which you can work on right now, is exercise 6. 1 through 12, I want you to tell me which of these 5 descriptions works best. Is it a true statement, a false statement, a question, a command, or nonsense? Now, some of these you might have to look up to know whether they're true or false. Others are probably going to be pretty obvious to you. For example, let's do number 1 together right now. Raise your hand. Jesus healed blind men. Nicholas, is this true, false, a question, a command, or nonsense?
True.
So we would write down, this is simply a true statement. And then I want you to do the same thing for the next 11 sentences. Finally, you do not have to do the challenge, but if you would like, please try to write your own nonsense sentence, but the requirement is that it needs to use correct grammar. All right, questions on your assignment? Questions on your assignment?
Sorry, the table bit me.
That's terrible. Questions on your assignment? All right, you may work on your assignment.